a good beat. Why aren't you dancing?
Dancing is forbidden. Dancing is forbidden. Dancing is forbidden.
Oh yeah! Yoo-hoo running crew, welcome to Dancing is Forbidden. I am Ronnie, world-class recorder player, as well as lifelong fan of, and one-time voice on Aqua Teen Hunger Force. On this podcast, we're doing more than just playing recorder, alright? We're doing a lot of that, but we're also talking about every Aqua Teen episode, one episode at a time. And the episode we are watching through and talking about this week is Season 5, Episode 5, Hoppy Bunny.
Carl, who's your friend?
Please, do not speak to the musician. I am Hoppy Bunny, and he is here to entertain.
Huh? Hoppy Bunny making its Adult Swim debut on February 17th, 2008. In this episode, Carl's house becomes a haven for furries. So, if you're not in the know, I mean, I'm guessing you've seen this episode, but if you're not in the know, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, a furry is a person who identifies with and enjoys sometimes dressing as anthropomorphic animals or creatures, especially as a member of a fandom devoted to the practice. So, a very topical episode of Aqua Teen. This episode always stood out to me in that way. I really don't remember when I first saw this one. It might have been like around 2008, but I don't know. But I do have strong memories of this one. Excited to dive into this one. What makes me more excited is letting you know we've got Matt Maiellaro and Dave Willis on this episode, as well as correspondence from the episode's editor, as well as one of its guest stars, J. Wade Edwards, as well as one of the original writers on this one, Ted Murphy. So we'll get into way more of that. I'm excited to have so many different, pieces of information, different perspectives on this one from the guys who made this episode. But I am a little disappointed because naturally that leaves less time for me, not even so much to talk, but to play some recorder for you. You recognize that one? That was the entire Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon album played concurrently. So you're wondering, Ronnie, how are you so good at recorder? What the hell? You never told us about this. Well, when I was on the Zoom call with Matt Maiellaro, he gave me some private lessons. As you'll see in this episode of Aqua Teen, he is the recorder wizard, and he taught me everything I know, which is now everything about the recorder. But I also asked Matt some other questions. First of all, a very important question. What is your social security number? I need to figure that out.
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Hold on, slow down.
7, 8, 9, 10. So it's I'm the only one that has that long of a social security number.
So there you have it, a little gift for the Aqua Teen Hunger Force fans out there. Matt Maiellaro's social security number. So I don't know what you do with that. Maybe you can get healthcare now. I don't know. But I also asked Matt, I said, hey, you're one of the creators of Aqua Teen Hunger Force. What have you been up to lately? What's going on in your world?
I've been making a lot of stuff for my YouTube channel. I go camping and I film myself cooking. Sometimes it's kind of serious, and sometimes I throw in a face hugger or a graphic that says I disappeared, that was never seen again. And then I've recently been working with Carl the Puppet, doing some, not just cooking, but campfire tales, fishing, interviews with some show things I've done, some of the characters. So, since basically all of Hollywood is shut down, I have these cameras and I have some free time, and so I'm just having fun with that.
Matt is chugging away on his YouTube channel. Link to that in the description to this podcast episode. If you haven't seen Matt's channel or you haven't looked at it in a while, I really would suggest you go back and look at it, or look at it for the first time. He really puts a lot of work into these videos. They're very fun. He's got all sorts of different stuff up there. And like he mentioned, he's working now with Carl the Puppet. And I should say, that's not the same Carl from Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Okay, more things can be named Carl than the character from the cartoon. But still, Matt's YouTube channel, he's doing all sorts of stuff. And he is doing his Meat Kingdom video series where him and Aqua Teen, long time, like day one Aqua Teen guy, John Breston, they make some meat and they also talk a bit about Aqua Teen. So keep an eye on that. So hey, that's our Aqua Teen news this week, or hey, as close as we'll get to Aqua Teen news, alright? Before we dive into the pop culture from the week that this episode of Aqua Teen came out, I gotta tell you about something I got cooking up, okay? I'm doing more than just playing the recorder. Let me tell you what I've been doing because I need your help with it. Yes, you are the chosen one, everybody listening to this. Okay, so what am I doing here? I put together a form that I would love for you to fill out. And this form, besides asking for your social security number, it's asking for your favorite Aqua Teen episodes. And the idea here is to get as many Aqua Teen fans as possible to fill out this form so that we can have a nice, sexy set of data that we can go through and try and figure out collectively our favorite to least favorite Aqua Teen episodes, which this is groundbreaking material, okay? This isn't just my idea. The US government specifically asked me to do this. So, how does it work? Again, there's a link to this form in the description to this podcast episode. First of all, I'll tell you, there's two versions of the form. There's a short form where you'll pick your top 3 favorite episodes from every season. You can pick less than 3, like if there's a season you only have 2 favorite episodes or whatever. You can do that. That's fine. You can pick less than 3, but not more. And I know you're saying, Ronnie, you fucking idiot. I'm listening to an Aqua Teen Hunger Force podcast, and you think I'm going to do the short form, the casual form? No. See, what you want, dear listener, is the long form. And with the long form, you go through and you rate every single Aqua Teen episode on a scale of A to F. So A, B, C, D, and F. You give it a rank like you're a goddamn school teacher. If you're saying, well, there's a couple episodes I don't know that well, I don't want to rate. You don't have to rate every single episode, just as many as you can. So, again, I'm going to compile all this data at a later date, make a video, just have some fun with it. Hey, there's nothing going on with Aqua Teen right now. The least we can do is fill out this form I did, okay? So, link to that in the description to this podcast episode. Have some fun with it, have a good time, open a bottle of wine, cook up some meth, have fun with it. So, with that having been said, what in the world was going on the week that Hoppy Bunny debuted? Let's go check it out. Wishing you would step back from that ledge, my friend, all the way to the top of the box office this week. We have Jumper pulling in $27 million. Jumper, it's our top film. I'm not familiar with this. I don't know if I remember seeing ads for it at the time. So I went here and I watched the trailer for Jumper. And if you're asking, Ronnie, what is Jumper about? Well, from that 2-minute trailer, I could tell you 2 things. Teleportation and special effects. Beyond that, I don't know what it is. But according to IMDb, Jumper is a young man with teleportation abilities suddenly finds himself in the middle of an ancient war between those like him and their sworn annihilators. So, Jumper here, loosely based on a novel by the same name. And I couldn't tell you the differences between the book and the movie. I'm guessing that the movie has better sound effects than the book, because in my experiences, books have just one stupid sound effect of a page turning. So, that's one thing I could tell you. Otherwise, I don't know the differences, but I can tell you the actors in the movie here. Not the actors in the book, the actors in the movie. We have Hayden Christensen, Samuel L. Jackson, and I'm seeing Kristen Stewart is on here back in 2008, and she will go on to be Bella in Twilight later this year, which is a much bigger movie than Jumper. A fun trivia fact on this film, because they go all over the world in it, like he's like teleporting everywhere. That's what you would do if you could teleport, right? I'm not going to just teleport to the bathroom because I'm too lazy to walk. I wear a diaper anyway, so I don't have to do that. But I would certainly be teleporting all over the world like they do in Jumper. And a trivia fact is, the crew was allowed to film inside the Roman Colosseum for 3 days under 3 conditions. No equipment could be placed on the ground. They could only shoot from 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. and from 3:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. to avoid disturbing tourists. And the only lighting allowed was natural sunlight. So pretty cool fact there. A little lesser known fact is that I recorded the first season of this podcast also in the Roman Colosseum, and they were much more harsh on me with the rules. In fact, they said I wasn't even supposed to be there, which is bullshit. But Jumper apparently was allowed to shoot there for 4 hours a day, and they got it done, okay? So here's another fun fact for you. Let me tell you who's not in Jumper. Eminem, okay? The rapper? No, not the candy, the rapper. I guess he was considered for the lead role on this until the film's director met Hayden Christensen, where then he decided on Hayden Christensen instead of Eminem. If Eminem was in this thing, dude, I wouldn't be recording this right now. I'd be watching this fucking movie. They dropped the ball there. I think Eminem would have given this movie some longevity. But you know who else is not in Jumper? Any of the cast and crew from Aqua Teen Hunger Force. So 2 missed opportunities there from the crew on Jumper, because no Eminem, no Aqua Teen Hunger Force cast and crew. I'm out. I'm not watching it. So what do you say? Well, I was going to say we jump over and listen to our top album this week, but it's one that we've already talked about. We've already listened to it. Look, last week it was Juno for Ridiculous. Juno popped that baby out, and now Alicia Keys is back with As I Am as our top album this week, as it was in some previous episodes. And musically, Flo Rida with Low featuring T-Pain, still our top single, and Seether with Fake It is still our top alternative single this week. So it's all old news for us here. If you're a new listener, we've already talked about these pieces of music in previous episodes here covering Season 5 of Aqua Teen. So taking a little peep, a little look over here at the Billboard charts. I'm looking at the Hot 100 singles charts. Of course, number 1 is Low by Flo Rida. I just told you that. Number 2 is With You by Chris Brown, not a song I'm familiar with. Number 3 is a song I am familiar with, Don't Stop the Music by Rihanna. So at this point, Rihanna's really making moves, making money moves, becoming the Rihanna we know today. And Don't Stop the Music, I like that song. We talked about Michael Jackson on the last podcast episode, and he is sampled on this song here in Don't Stop the Music. So that's a few of our other musical things. I'm seeing number 4 is Apologize by Timbaland featuring One Republic, a song that I'm very familiar with, that very much brings me to 2008. Let's go and see what's happening in our video games this week for the gamers out there. The first game I'm telling you about, okay, remember the movie we were talking about, Jumper? The guy could teleport around. Well, there's a game coming out this week called Jumper Griffin's Story. So yes, alongside the film, there is this video game coming out this week here, and I think this is considered one of the worst games of all time. Like, the reviews are horrible. It has horrible scores. On the PS2, it has a 33 out of 100. The Wii got a 28 out of 100, and Xbox 360 has a 29 out of 100. This all over on Metacritic. And I'm watching some gameplay of this game. It looks horrible. I'm watching the Xbox 360 gameplay. And there's this scene, right, where you're the main character, and oh no, the bad guys close the gate on you. And they're jumping you. They're going to attack you. You're trapped in this little area. They close the gate. What are you going to do? The character can fucking teleport to other continents. Like, what? What? How is this? Shouldn't you be able to just teleport out of any bad situation in this game? Now, in the game, you do teleport around, but you're kind of just teleporting like a few feet at a time. I don't know. Look, I understand why the game has bad reviews, and I'm reading the comments, and there's people like, yeah, I gave up on this game back in 2008, so we got some dog shit Jumper game coming out. I do want to say, back to the movie, it does look pretty decent. Like, it looks like a good time, but this game does not, okay? We also have Lost Odyssey coming to Xbox 360, Penumbra Black Plague coming to Linux and Windows, and the last game I want to talk about here pretty briefly is Innocent Life, a futuristic Harvest Moon. And I'm kind of familiar with the Harvest Moon games. You usually farm in them or something. So I'm like, oh, cool, futuristic Harvest Moon. You're farming in space, baby. Well, I looked at the game. I feel like futuristic was a very generous term on their part. That's all I'm going to say about it. So, hey, it is February 17th, 2008, and you are the biggest Jumper fan in the whole universe. Nobody loves Jumper like you do. You read the book back in the 90s. Now, this week, you're going to a movie theater, and you are watching the movie, and you're saying, God damn it, I wish I could teleport like that. My life would be so much fucking better if I could teleport around like that. And you're thinking, if I could teleport like that, I could teleport to the club and see the shawty with the apple bottom jeans and the boots with the fur, like T-Pain and Flo Rida are singing about in their song that's popular this week. You would teleport to Atlanta and see that. It would be amazing. You also would then teleport to Best Buy and steal the Jumper video game because you spent all your money on the movie ticket now. You can't afford the game this week. So fuck, you can't teleport and steal a game. You walk home, okay? You don't teleport home. You walk home. You turn on Adult Swim. You're like, all right, look, I'll watch Adult Swim. Maybe they'll have an episode where somebody teleports around because I just love teleporting so much. Adult Swim, they do wacky stuff like that sometimes. So let's see what's going on. Well, I'm telling you right now, I watched several of the episodes airing tonight, and I didn't see any teleporting. Now, that's not to say there's none, but I'm sorry, Jumper fan back in February 17th, 2008. You're in for probably not what you're looking for, but these are some fun episodes nonetheless. So coming on at 10 p.m. tonight, kicking off our night of Adult Swim, we have Family Guy with I Never Met the Dead Man. This is an old episode of Family Guy. In fact, it is the second episode ever of Family Guy. And I never realized how morbid these initial Family Guy episode titles were for this first few run of episodes. Because the first episode is Death Has a Shadow. Then we have here episode 2, I Never Met the Dead Man. Episode 3 is Chitty Chitty Death Bang. And then episode 4 is Mind Over Murder. And then after that, it gets less morbid. So that's kind of like a bold statement when a comedy comes out, especially to have that many kind of titles like that. So interesting, but an old episode of Family Guy. So moving on here, 10:30 p.m., we have American Dad with Dope and Faith, that being new to Adult Swim this night, but not a new episode. 11 p.m., we have Family Guy with Believe It or Not, Joe's Walking on Air. This is a 2007 episode of Family Guy where Joe gets leg transplants, and Joe is the paraplegic character who is in a wheelchair. So in this episode, he's up and walking around, and all sorts of shenanigans ensue. 11:30 p.m., we get Robot Chicken with Moesha Poppins. And I watched this episode. I haven't seen Robot Chicken in a long time, maybe since like 2006 or something. And I think I liked it more in 2006. That's all I'll say. But do you know what show I like more now than I did in 2006? It's our show coming on at 12:45, Aqua Teen Hunger Force, with this episode, Hoppy Bunny. I didn't watch Hoppy Bunny, so I'm sorry. So the rest of this podcast episode is me speculating on what it might be. So that is a new episode this week. After that, at midnight, we have Squidbillies with new episode, Mephistopheles Traveled Below to a Southern State whose motto is wisdom, justice, and moderation. So this episode title and the episode itself a play on The Devil Went Down to Georgia. And I watched this episode. Squidbillies also a show I liked as a kid, and watching Squidbillies back here, I was very, I don't want to say surprised, because I know Squidbillies is a good show. I liked it. That's what I'm saying. I laughed at it a lot. They are playing, like I said, on Devil Went Down to Georgia, and Rusty, and Early as well, later in the episode, they get really, really, really good at guitar. They're shredding up, doing some crazy shit. I mean, it's a music-based episode. I'm a musician. You heard me tooting on the recorder earlier. I'm really good at the recorder, so I liked this music-based episode. There's shredding in the episode. I was like, oh, is that Matt Maiellaro? Did they get Matt to do some shredding on that? It's not Matt, but it is another Adult Swim veteran, Mr. Brendan Small from Home Movies and Metalocalypse. So makes sense that they got Brendan to do it. I really enjoyed this episode of Squidbillies. And I guess I should say, Aqua Teen and Squidbillies are only new episodes this night. After that, 12:15 a.m. gives us Tim and Eric Awesome Show Great Job with the episode Forest. Following that at 12:30, Xavier Renegade Angel with Pet Suicide, but Sue spelled like the native peoples of the Great Plains of North America. So a fun little play on words there. 12:45 a.m., we get Lucy, the Daughter of the Devil with Dildo Factory. So I'm like, all right, this episode's called Dildo Factory. I gotta check this out. I gotta watch it. And I liked it. Like I've said before, this show shares a lot of DNA with Home Movies. There's also just a crap ton of Aqua Teen alums on it. And the plot of this episode is that the devil owns a dildo factory because, sex is evil and all that good stuff. And his daughter Lucy, she finds out about this and she's like, oh, Dad, I have some dildo ideas. and her dad, the devil, is like, no, I don't want to hear any of that, like, from my daughter. And so there's a scene that's stuck with me. She breaks into the dildo factory because she's trying to steal, like, parts so she can make her own prototype to show her dad. Like, hey, look, I can do this. And one of the security guards catches her, and he's played by my favorite comedian ever, Todd Barry, who, of course, also plays Romulus on Aqua. So Todd's character catches Lucy, and she has a dildo in her back pocket, right? Because she's taking stuff. And he's like, is that a dildo in your pocket? And then Lucy says, no, I'm just happy to see you. Which is like this obvious, stupid, but funny joke. And then Todd's character is like, I've heard that one before. And then Lucy goes to explain, and then he cuts her off saying, every shoplifter makes that same joke. So, I don't know. I just love the way they played with this really obvious joke and kind of turned it on its head a little bit. So that is our episode here, Lucy, the Daughter of the Devil. It's a fun time. After that, 1 a.m., Garth Marenghi's Dark Place with Once Upon a Beginning. And this is the first episode of Dark Place, and if you've been listening to every podcast episode, in Ridiculous, that was the last episode, so I thought we'd be done with Dark Place, but it looks like they're just starting it over again, because the show is only 6 episodes. But I went and watched this as well, and I really enjoyed it, just like the previous Dark Place episode I told you about. And what really surprised me about this show, because it came out in like 2004, is that it really like does what Tim and Eric would go on to do, which it purposely spoofs lo-fi, low-budget 80s and 90s kind of content in a very purposeful way. They'll have intentionally bad shots and weird overdubs and things like that, which Tim and Eric eventually get known for right here on Adult Swim. And not just with Tim and Eric Awesome Show, great job, but more so like check it out with Dr. Steve Brule, early Eric Andre's show. Like they shared that aesthetic that I was surprised to see here that Garth Marenghi's Dark Place was already doing over in the UK in 2004. And that's not to say they're the first ones, but I love this kind of playing with a medium, and I haven't seen it a ton outside of the Tim and Eric world, so it was exciting to see here. So definitely check out Garth Marenghi's Dark Place again. It's very fun, very much worth your time. Closing out the night, we have Home Movies now at 5 a.m. So as per usual, the Adult Swim lineup just repeats, like it repeats from Family Guy to Dark Place again, and then Home Movies airs at 5 a.m. So maybe if you're getting up for school, you'll be able to see it, and that episode that you would see would be Director's Cut. I think I've talked about that one on the podcast before, but it's a classic early Home Movies episode with the whole Franz Kafka metamorphosis rock opera. It's a good time. Fun lineup here. I like the lineup. But you know what I like even more? I lied to you earlier. I did watch this episode of Aqua Teen Hoppy Bunny, and we're going to talk about it right now because that's the best episode of them all. Let's go talk about it.
Check it out. Check it out, y'all. Check it out.
Coming up here in our Hoppy Bunny coverage, we are going to be force-fed hot information by 4 of the people who worked on this episode. They're giving us information so that we could be smarter, so that we can be better informed citizens, so that perhaps we can impress the ladies with our Aqua Teen Hunger Force knowledge. And you might be saying, well, Ronnie, what the hell? I have some questions about Aqua Teen for those guys. You didn't ask me. Well, that's because you're not ready to ask them any questions yet, okay? You're just not ready for it. You say, well, Ronnie, what do I have to do to be ready? How do I be ready to ask Dave Willis or Jay Edwards or Ted Murphy or Matt Maiellaro a question? Well, I'll tell you how, because for centuries it was impossible, but I have figured out a way that you can do it, and to do it, you gotta head on over to patreon.com/dancingisforbidden, sign up at the $5 and up level, and that will grant you the special Power Stones, which will then let you respond to my Patreon posts and ask questions. So I'm sure you're sitting there like, what the fuck are you talking? Power crystals? What? That sounds like a scam, Ronnie. Well, maybe it is and maybe it isn't, but you know who didn't think it was a scam? Back in March, actually on March 1st, we had double trouble. We had MTD signing up at the $5 duffel bag of cash tier, and Jonathan B signing up at the number one in the Hoodgie $10 tier, back to back on the same day, boys. They didn't think it was a scam, and guess what? They were right, because not only did they get access to asking questions to Aqua Teen's cast and crew, but also they got a crap load of exclusive podcast episodes, and best of all, they got to put on their resume that they are a supporter of Dancing is Forbidden. And you know what? They also put me down as a reference, and also I'm now in their will. So MTD, Jonathan B, thank you both. Without supporters like you, we couldn't keep the lights on here at Dancing is Forbidden Studios because, goddammit, playing the recorder doesn't pay like it used to back in the good old days.
Coming up next, Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Hoppy Bunny making its Adult Swim debut on February 17th, 2008, and I'm here to tell you, we got kind of a big cast on this one, and not just voice actors, we also have some live action actors as well. So let's start off with the voices. First of all, we've got our usual suspects. We have the fellas, Mr. Dana Snyder as Master Shake, Carrie Means as Frylock, and Dave Willis as Meatwad Carl, and we will hear Dave doing the voice of a TV announcer in the episode. Joining on with them, we have two longtime and very important people to Aqua Teen's history. We have Aqua Teen producer and editor Ned Hastings playing the panda furry character, who we will see briefly. And we have Scott Fry doing the pawn shop owner. And Scott Fry, he worked... It's like an understatement to say he was an animator on the show. Scott Fry was the founder of Radical Axis, which was the studio that did the animation for Aqua Teen and several other shows. I don't know that we've talked about Scott on the podcast, but we will get into him when he shows up here. I'll tell you more about him. And he's not the only Scott on this one, because joining these guys, we have actor Scott Adsit playing Hoppy Bunny, the, I guess you could say, villain of the episode. Scott Adsit here, he was on Moral Oral at the time on Adult Swim, and he is credited on this episode as C. Puppington, which was his Moral Oral character, so we'll get more into Scott on here. Well, I guess we'll get into both Scotts once they pop up here, but jumping over to the live action department here, we have Matt Maiellaro somewhat reprising his role as a DVD instructor. So back in Season 4, Episode 6's Party All the Time, Matt played this guitar shredder instructor. Well, this time, he's a recorder instructor. He's teaching you how to play recorder and also get ladies in the process. And he's putting his money where his mouth is, okay? He's not just telling you you'll get babes. He has babes dancing with him in that video. We have Penny Pierce as one of the dancers, and then Cindy as one of the dancers, and we will get into both of those lovely women once we get to them in the episode. So those are our actors on this one. Our editors here are both J. Wade Edwards and Ned Hastings, so they are in the episode and also editing on the episode. And then there's another thing I need to talk to you about, which, like Ridiculous, our previous episode, this episode of Aqua Teen was not originally conceived by Matt Maiellaro and Dave Willis, like most of the other episodes. This one was originally written by Ted Murphy and Tom Nicoletti. So similarly to Ridiculous, where these guys wrote this script, turned it into Matt and Dave, and then Matt and Dave did a rewrite on it. Now, since putting out the Ridiculous episode, Ted Murphy reached out to me and offered just so much more information on this whole process. So let's take a moment here just to talk about Ted a little bit. And Ted tells me that he was a student at the Atlanta College of Art, and he was studying animation and digital design. And it was during this time that Adult Swim launched, and Ted was just fascinated with the way that Adult Swim did so much with so little, right? They didn't have much animation, but they compensated with just great writing, great voice acting, and Ted knew he wanted to be a part of that. And while in school, Ted's teacher handed him a flyer for a Space Ghost Coast to Coast talk that was being led by voice of Space Ghost George Lowe and voice of Moltar and Zorak, as well as very important animator on Space Ghost, C. Martin Croker. And worth mentioning, of course, C. Martin Croker goes on to design Meatwad and Frylock and do a lot of animation for Aqua Teen. Voice of Dr. Weird, right? We love C. Martin Croker, and Ted eventually does go on to be close with C. Martin Croker. But back to the early 2000s here, Ted ends up getting an internship at Adult Swim for about 9 months. So he was an intern on Aqua Teen, Space Ghost, and Brack Show. And Ted, for us here in the Aqua Teen world, he worked on basically the back half of season 2, the 2003 season. So episodes like Total Recall, The Clowning, The Cloning, just all sorts of like my favorite episodes, including my absolute favorite episode, Kidney Car. So Ted was around for that. After interning, though, his, internship ended, and he tells me that he got a job at an Apple store. And you might be thinking, well, Ronnie, why are you telling me this? That's not Adult Swim. Well, this is pretty interesting because Ted mentions how he helped a lot of the shows on Adult Swim, like the people making the shows, get discounts on computers, which kept him in contact with some of the producers at Adult Swim. So I thought that was very, very cool that he found a way to keep in contact and then eventually did start working at William Street and Adult Swim as an actual employee. And Ted does mention that while working at William Street, he still kept that Apple Store job part-time since, as Ted says, low-budget animation oddly doesn't pay a lot. So at that same time that he's working at the Apple Store, though, Ted is interning at 7030, which is the company making C-Lab 2021. It was from there that Ted goes on to work on 12-Ounce Mouse, and then after 12-Ounce Mouse was finished, Ted bounced between editing Aqua Teen Hunger Force and Squidbillies. So that is the period we are in now, here in 2008, where we've seen Ted pop up as an edit assist, and that's what's going on. And it's during that time that he and Tom Nicoletti write the Hoppy Bunny script. I asked Ted specifically what edit assist meant because I was confused by that title when I covered some of those episodes that he was the edit assist on. Ted says it was basically the same job, but working under one of the senior editors. On some of the episodes, I would do the first pass, and on others, I just worked on individual scene notes. I think in total, I actually did about 4 or 5 episodes, including Boston. So before we get into Hoppy Bunny, I do have some info from Ted about Ridiculous, because he also helped write that one, that I want to tell you about, because I found this very fascinating. So of course, with Ridiculous, there is that scene where Master Shake microwaves a cat. Well, technically, he microwaves 2 cats. In a message with me, Ted says, Ridiculous was originally a spoof of Pet Sematary. I personally wanted to find something better than that microwave scene, but Tom had the habit of turning the script in the moment we finished the first draft. When I first saw the animation of the cat exploding, I felt so terrible that I ended up adopting a cat. Her name was Mr. Sparkles, and she was my best friend for 15 years. Ted also tells me Mr. Sparkles goes on to voice an episode of the show Archer, that she was the Space Ocelot kitten in Season 10, Episode 7. Because I should say, after leaving Adult Swim, Ted goes on to work in advertising, doing editing, motion graphics, and animatics, but he also edited the animatics for the last few seasons of Archer. So pretty cool how that episode of Aqua Teen, Ridiculous, went on to influence a future Archer episode. But something else that Ted did after Aqua Teen was he ended up becoming neighbors with C. Martin Croker, and Ted tells me, I worked for C. Martin Croker, compositing his animation into an After Effects file to pass on to Radical Axis. I learned a lot working with him in his legendary basement studio. Of course, that basement studio we heard a lot about in my interview with Aqua Teen artist Matt Jenkins, so always nice to see these running threads between these different stories. So, on to the episode at hand, Hoppy Bunny. I asked Ted a couple questions about writing this script here, and unfortunately Ted doesn't remember much because in Ted's words, we honestly wrote the scripts pretty quickly just to get something on the page. I wanted to take more time to rewrite and refine them, but Tom would hand them in the moment we got to an ending. So, maybe frustrating for Ted here. There is something to be said that Matt and Dave did pick 2 of these scripts, so there is something to that, but yeah, Ted would have liked to have gone back, changed some things, but unfortunately didn't get the opportunity. But at the same time, it's like, Well, Matt and Dave were going to change stuff regardless, so at that point, is it even worth getting as in-depth? Although Ted does tell me that more jokes from Hoppy Bunny make it in from the original script than did in Ridiculous. I couldn't help but ask Ted if he had completed any other scripts for Aqua Teen that Matt and Dave did not pick. And Ted says yes. Ted says, there were 2 more scripts that were written, one about them being on a Japanese game show, and one about Meatwad getting a girlfriend. They weren't that great. But I mean, those sound fun to me. That sounds like a good time to me. Both of those are very interesting episode ideas. But hey, a 2 out of 4 pick rate, that's not bad at all. So thank you to Ted for answering my questions, shedding some light on this. Again, it's not usual that Matt and Dave would use somebody else's script like this. So I appreciate Ted sharing with us. I do want to say you could find Ted over on Instagram. He is at Spooky Tunes, and there will be a link to this in the description, as will the links to everybody's social media profiles who helped with this one. I definitely suggest checking out what Ted is up to with Spooky Tunes. He describes it as he makes and hides ghost characters in a similar way to geocaching. So really cool looking characters. He's putting all over the place. Go check it out and give Ted a follow. The last thing to tell you before we jump into Hoppy Bunny here is there is a commentary track on this episode on the DVD, and it features our friend Ted Murphy alongside his co-writer on the draft of this one, Tom Nicoletti. We also have Nick Day, he interned on Aqua Teen. He PA'd on the first Aqua Teen movie. He also worked on other shows in the Matt and Dave world, like Squidbillies, 12 Ounce Mouse, and Perfect Hair Forever. And then also, voice of Master Shake, Dana Snyder is on there. So we will be referencing that a little bit. So, hey, Hoppy Bunny, what are we opening in on after our intro? Some recorder, baby. It's the recorder wizard. So Carl's sitting, it's nighttime. Carl's sitting in his living room watching his TV, and it's some sort of commercial or infomercial for Recorder Wizard Vagina Domination Volume 1. So the idea here is that this recorder wizard will teach you how to play the recorder, which women find irresistible, and you'll have all the women you could ever want. This is our live action segment, so that is Matt Maiellaro playing the recorder wizard, and you won't hear them in the podcast, but if you watch this, which I hope you do, you'll see there are 2 women dancing here, dancing around with the recorder wizard. Let's give it a listen.
Smoking. That was on fire. That riff burned down the town, man. Hey, you too. You can learn the secrets of recorder, man. Every vagina on earth will be yours.
That's right.
Included in your kit is a recorder, instructional DVD, banana nut massage oil, man. And you get 5 pages of sheet music. Play all your favorite soft rock hits. Get you some tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Tonight! Carl's so excited. To address that tonight aspect there, I want to shout out listener and supporter of the show, UK No Tamashi, who asked me to ask Matt and Dave, where exactly does that tonight exclamation from Carl stem from, that catchphrase of his? When I asked Dave, he didn't know. He thought that Matt's the one who came up with it, so then I asked Matt if he knew where Carl's tonight phrase came from.
Anything really funny that Carl says, I came up with. I'm just kidding. You know what? That was so long ago that I'm sure we were both throwing out things. And tonight may have been something for me. It's just such an exclamatory thing that's so vague, meaning that there's something big happening that's about to happen. And that often happens with Carl.
Yeah. He gets killed usually that night is usually what happens. Yeah.
But you know, when it comes to yelling what happened to my friggin' whatever, I mean, that's totally Dave. Totally Dave. But when he was sleeping one night, with a needle, I put the words in a needle and put it into his brain.
Okay.
So he thinks it's him, but it's really me.
So there you have it. Matt Maiellaro coming up with all the good jokes on the show. And sometimes he's generous by brainwashing Dave into thinking that he came up with them. To address the visuals in this infomercial, though, because so much is going on here, we see on the screen again, there's like a box that says Recorder Wizard Vagina Domination Volume 1 Reek Order now. And then it says units sold 0. And then it says only $299.99, but that's crossed out. It's on sale for $239.99. The phone number on this is 555-0156. And not only do you get this DVD set, which I love the cover. It's like a little caricature of Matt Maiellaro here. But you get a recorder, you get banana nut massage oil. So this is really like getting you set up to get all these babes with your recorder skills. And worth mentioning here that this banana nut massage oil looks like a plastic container of engine oil or motor oil with a label slapped onto it. The label, honestly, the background of it, it's like a sunset on a beach or something, but it reminds me of Carl's bedroom. I can't say for sure that it is, but it looks very, very, very close. I'm like A-Bing it to Carl's like mural he has on his wall there. Very similar. And then you also get 5 pages of sheet music. Worth mentioning, like we see the sheet music, and in the commentary track, it is said that the sheet music was just a font from Photoshop, and then it said that it was actually the Communist Manifesto that was just pasted into this music font. So that's what they're saying in the DVD commentary. Of course, I don't know if that's actually true or not, but it'd be pretty funny if it was. These props, I do want to say, Tom Nicoletti is credited as the prop master on this episode, so that leads me to believe that Tom was the one who made these props for this. So to go on to the acting here, we have Matt Maiellaro basically reprising his guitar instructor from Season 4, Episode 6's Party All the Time. So in that episode, we talked about that a lot. The interesting thing here is that between Matt and J. Wade Edwards, I couldn't find out where this was shot. I can see that it was not the same location as the guitar instructor skit that uses this character, because that was done in Michael Kohler's Blue Tube studio. Matt says it was not done there, and visually I could see it was different. When talking with J. Wade Edwards, he told me that it was done, he thinks, in Michael Kohler's studio, but again, Matt doesn't think that was the case, and at least we could see it's visually different. Maybe it could be a different room in the studio, but I don't know. We don't know where this was shot. Regardless, Matt is wearing the same wig as before. He has lots of the same costume props from the Party All the Time shoot. And the difference here from that one is that he's not alone here. So we have Penny Pierce, who we see as a woman. She's dancing around. She's also the one holding the props, like as we see what's included when you purchase this. She is the one holding those items. And unfortunately, I can't track down who she is. So J. Wade Edwards said, I'm totally guessing here, but Penny Pierce might have been a friend of someone in the office, like a friend of Dana Swanson or Kim Manning. Obviously, though, Jay said he's just guessing. When I asked Dave Willis, who is Penny, do you remember who Penny is? Dave said,
No, we might have gotten her for, might have had her for something else though. I'm not really sure. Sorry, I don't have I mean, it's very possible we might have gone to Claremont Lounge and seen if any of the dancers wanted to do something. That sounds familiar to me, but I don't know. No clue.
Dave not having a clue. He said maybe they went to Claremont Lounge to see if one of the dancers would want to be involved. Claremont Lounge being an adult entertainment club in Atlanta, Georgia. And worth mentioning, Matt did not remember either. So we've got a wide net here for who Penny maybe is. But regardless, she does a great job in this shoot. Fortunately, though, I can tell you who Cindy is, the other babe dancing around with the recorder wizard. Cindy is our friend J. Wade Edwards.
Jay was actually like way too into that character. We couldn't get him out of that character it took a week. He was showing up to work in that, and I'm like, dude.
He's like, we need more reshoots, guys. Come on.
Yeah. Can we shoot it again? Because I didn't quite get my hip in that direction, and I'm like, look, you can wear that stuff all day long. I don't care, but at least do your job. Stop dancing and edit.
You got to get him a standing desk so he could dance while doing his thing.
Yeah, and a pole.
Matt goes on to tell me how obsessed with this character Jay was, so stick around for the very end of the podcast episode where you can hear us go off about that. Obviously, Matt's joking around here. I did reach out to Jay about playing this role, because I guess they could only get one woman to do it, and they wanted two. So Jay, hey, we've talked to Jay on the podcast before. He was our first long-form guest. Jay is committed to the shoot. He's committed to the final product. Jay is not afraid to completely get into it for the shoot. Jay told me, I love these, in parentheses, sometimes disturbing, end parentheses, walks down memory lane. It reminds me of how we just did whatever the fuck we thought was funny. What a time. Jay says, I barely remember that at all. That's how everyday mundane dressing up and doing that was. Jay tells me, the wig I'm wearing is probably from a Halloween costume shop. The dress I'm wearing is a costume I had around for years and years. I had a duffel bag full of 70s disco clothes found at a thrift store, and would pull it out at parties for impromptu costume changes. I'm pretty sure that costume is in my short film Tiki Puka Puka also. Jay then says, Cindy was my nickname in college. Seriously. So thank you so much to Jay. Jay actually told me while responding to me that he was traveling in Italy. So thank you, Jay, for taking the time to respond to us here. He says he would have loved to have gotten on Zoom and talked about this, but hey, he's in Italy. He's busy eating pizzas and filming 4 hours a day in the Roman Colosseum. As to the outfits here, Penny is wearing a glittery red top and then a darker skirt. And then Jay is wearing, of course, a wig, a long blonde wig, and then a floral dress and green pantyhose. On these outfits, Dave Willis says,
it's weird that the hot women are dressed sort of like grannies, like third grade homeroom substitute teachers.
Dave enjoyed seeing these outfits all these years later. I mean, I think like Penny is wearing an appropriate outfit for this role, but Jay is wearing such a conservative outfit because they're trying to pretend like it's not Jay Edwards. And if you watch this, really pay attention to Jay. First of all, it's sexy as hell seeing him shake his booty around, but also he's trying to like hide his face a lot. Like you're not supposed to see it's him. But then other times he's like licking his mouth and stuff. I don't know. Jay, he's having fun. Again, stick around for the very end of the podcast to hear what Matt Maiellaro has to say about that, which may or may not be true. But you know what is true? 2 episodes previous in Couples Skate, there's a part in the episode where the Aqua teens, remember, in that episode, they're still trapped by Markula. They are on the phone with Carl, and they're like, can you come save us? Well, Carl turns the TV on, and he's like, oh, I don't know, I'm busy. This is what Carl is watching on his TV. It's Jay Edwards dancing around. So they repurposed this there in that episode that came 2 episodes before this one. At the end of the commercial, we do see 2 throwbacks to season 2 of Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Basically, at the end of the commercial, we see 2 cartoon guys with recorders. And both of those guys are from season 2, episode 4's Supercomputer, the guys who originated in that Oogie McTagh, that commercial there. So these guys in lots of commercials. We also saw them again in season 4, episode 4's Dickisode. And maybe we've seen these guys elsewhere too. But also, when we see them in this episode, 2 babes go on either side of them. Those are the women from season 2, episode 1's Super Birthday Snake, when Frylock gets some, in his word, some bitches. Those are the same women that are like kissing on him and licking him and all this stuff. I grew up on season 2 of Aqua Teen, excited to see these characters showing up in this commercial. So that's a bit to the visuals here. I do want to mention, though, I love that we could see there are some Marshall guitar cabinets and stuff, which is funny because this character is playing recorder, not guitar, but that is Matt Maiellaro's guitar influence coming in. If you don't know what a recorder is, I guess I'm kind of backloading this, huh? A recorder is a flute-like instrument, and the only reason I am familiar with it, and possibly you as well, is because I played it in elementary school. Our whole class, we all got recorders, and that's kind of how we did music class. And I remember being disappointed because I heard oh, we're getting recorders. I thought that meant like recording technology, right? Like I thought we were going to like make, I don't know, like we were going to be cutting albums or something at 8 years old. So I hear that, I'm like, oh, cool, all right. And I found out it's just some little fucking flute. So, you know, you learn the classics, Mary Had a Little Lamb, Hot Cross Buns, things of that nature. And I think the recorder gets a bad rap because so many made are these cheapo ones for kids. Like the ones you're seeing that Matt's playing in the episode there, they're like these see-through ones, you know, like the plastic ones, the ones I have. They're cheaply made, and that's how you can give them to little kids, right? But then the instrument gets this bad rap of being this cheap, annoying sounding thing. But there are higher end recorders that do sound very lovely, more in line of like a nice, beautiful flute sound. But most of the recorders you're going to come across, they're not going to be so great. But that makes this skit so great, because to me, it's this instrument I was forced to play as a kid that I hated playing. And seeing them do something like that guitar instructor video, but with a recorder of all instruments, is so great because it's seen as like such a pointless kind of instrument, which again, it's not, it's just the impression that it gives because of the place it's taken up in music teaching. So we're about 50 minutes into the podcast. What do you say? I think we're ready now for our second clip from Hoppy Bunny. Let's get into it here. I didn't want to go too fast, really. I'm trying to really just ease you into this episode. So, our second clip now, Carl, he liked what he saw. He's in on this. So, it's daytime now, however many days later. Maybe it's even the next day. Carl, he bought it, and a long box is going to be thrown on his doorstep. The Aqua teens are going to come over because they've got no lives of their own, and they're going to be commenting on Carl's new package.
You got a package here, Carl.
Yeah, Carl, it's true. You got a package out here.
If I can open it and play with whatever is in it, please stay quiet. Thank you.
Give me that.
What'd you get, Carl? You get you a hot dog?
Yeah, I ordered a hot dog through the mail.
Well, hot dang giggity. You gonna give me some?
Oh, yeah. I'll give you the whole thing when it comes out the other end.
He said you're gonna give me some hot dog.
Which you will split with me after I determine which half is bigger, for you have been known to rook me.
That wasn't a hot dog.
I shook it. Only processed meat makes that sound.
Meat make this sound, too.
Oh, no, Meatwad, no, you didn't.
That was a little one. Hang on. Oh, yeah.
Look at that. The stoop melted.
So that is Meatwad just going to Fartville there, just pushing him out. He doesn't care, okay? He's proud of his body and his bodily functions. One thing that stuck out to me... Stuck out? What does that even mean? One thing that stood out to me was that when Frylock and Meatwad are talking, you could really hear the, like, room reverb from the studio that they're in.
You got a package here, Carl.
Yeah, Carl, it's true. You got a package out here.
That's just because both voice actors there are yelling, so you're going to get that more. You don't hear that with Dana, though. And the reason that is because Dana did not record in Atlanta like Dave Willis and Carrie Means did. Dana was, I think, usually in New York. I guess I don't know exactly where he was at this point. But point is, Dana usually recorded for the show remotely. So that's why you'll find if Dave and Carrie both have some sort of like issue with their vocal takes, it's not going to be on Dana's because he was in a different studio and probably a nicer studio because the one that they would use in Atlanta would be owned. It was probably in Williams Street, right? It's like a small studio that they would use as opposed to Dana, who would be going to a more professional and widely used studio. So some great jokes there. I love that whole sequence. I love that the Aqua teens, they just run up to Carl's house as soon as there's a package on his doorstep. Like they have nothing going on in their world. So when Carl does have something going on, they're very excited by that. Great jokes. Let's keep on moving here. We're going to go into Carl's house. And Carl, he's going to be pulling his pink recorder out of the box. I do want to say, because the box was long, that's why Meatwad's like, is that a hot dog? It doesn't make sense how Carl also got the DVD and the massage oil, and I guess the sheet music could have been, wrapped up and put in there. But regardless, Carl's got his recorder, and he's watching the DVD here. Unfortunately, though, as Carl goes to put his lips to the recorder, a bunch of wires are going to come out of it, going into his mouth, going into his hands. This isn't a normal recorder, okay? I've got 2 of them right here. They never did that to me. I'm actually kind of disappointed by that, but it happens to Carl, and then we're going to see, back to our live-action video, the character that Maiellaro is playing, he's going to take his wig off. I don't even know if I described how this character looked, because we've already talked about this character, but yeah, he has like a long black wig on, he has ashless chaps on, and he has like neon kind of like fish netting on his arms. Go back and check out Party All the Time for more information on this character outside of this specific episode. But he's going to take the wig off. Turns out this whole thing was a ruse.
All right, you bought the kit. Cool. Now, first things first. Did you rip those pants off like an ape? All right, you conquered step 1. Step 2. Put the recorder to your lips, man. Put them in there like this. That's where the brains are, man. You gotta think to play a recorder.
Wait a minute. No.
Relax, guys. Those are just wires. Let them do their thing, man. They're not hassling you, right? This is America, home of the eagle.
Relax, guy. Those are just wires. So, yeah, Carl here, he's under siege from this recorder. While filming this, Matt told me that, a lot of this was probably ad-libbed. Maybe they sketched out, the idea of what they wanted to happen in these live-action segments. But a lot of it was probably ad-lib, and Dave Willis would have been throwing lines to Matt, too, to try out, and they would just play around with it. Matt also mentioned to me that doing this character was kind of hard because it hurt his voice, and I could see why, because of the vocal fry he's doing to do this character.
All right, you bought the kit.
Almost sounds like Zorak to me. He's like, all right, you bought the kit. So I could see how that could get tiring for Matt to do. So moving on here, we're still in the same scene, and the character Matt is playing is going to take his wig off, revealing he has short hair, and his voice will be pitched down, so he'll have something of an evil voice. Something sinister is happening. Carl will fall down because, remember, he's got these wires going into him. And then we will see our main villain of the episode, Hoppy Bunny, is going to jump into the scene. And Hoppy Bunny, visually, he's a furry, right? So he's a person in a costume. The costume is a giant pink bunny with a crown on. And he will be holding something of like an elf costume out to Carl.
Okay, step 4. Should not have bought this recorder. Recorder is not for everyone. You might have a pre-existing condition where it's like you're allergic to recorders. I'm serious, man. You are stupid.
Put this on and play. Play for me.
Hoppy Bunny here, I guess he's a big fan of the recorder. I love, we'll be here all day, longer than we already are, if I go into all these little jokes that Matt is saying, but every single thing coming out of his mouth is so funny to me. He's like, you might have a condition or something where you're allergic to the recorder. It's just so absurd. And I want to let you know that Dave told me that this was one of his favorite parts from this episode, was when Matt takes the wig off like that. Something I found interesting, though, about this character is the first time we saw him in season 4, he was just a pretty straightforward guitar teacher, right? I mean, he wasn't a very good guitar teacher because he was playing, these very quick shredding things, expecting a new player to just learn it. But it was pretty straightforward. But then here, the character is somewhat evil. He has evil intentions, getting you to buy this recorder that he knows is going to put wires in you and I guess kind of take over your body. So it's like, oh, was he evil the first time too? We just didn't see it. I mean, obviously this is pointless speculation, but it is fun to kind of be like, oh, I didn't expect that character to be evil, but he's evil this time around. I couldn't help but ask Matt, which version does he prefer? Does he prefer the guy with the guitar who's sitting on a motorcycle, or does he prefer the recorder teacher with the evil intentions and hot babes?
I think I like the motorcycle one better because I'm playing guitar, which is something that I like to do. And I was making fun of 12 capos and bandanas and tuning up wrong. And so to me, that one was more dear to my heart. But the recorder one, I mean, that one's just a notch lower than dear to my heart. But that one was so stupid. And I was listening to the dialogue and the graphics. I completely forgot about it until you brought it up, and I watched it, and I'm like, this guy should have his own show.
Yeah, I would watch it.
Yeah, I would too. I would be in it.
And worth mentioning here that Matt, he kind of, in a way, dresses up as this character in some of his YouTube videos. So again, links to that in the description to this podcast episode. I'll nudge him to make more content like this. Let's say, you have the costumes, Matt. You have the guitars. What's stopping you? So moving on here to Hoppy Bunny, played by Scott Adsit. We heard him very quickly at the end of that last clip. And Scott, he is credited on this episode as C. Puppington, that being, I'm guessing, because this is the case most of the time this happens, is because Aqua Teen was not a union show at this point. So if you were in the Screen Actors Guild, you weren't supposed to be on a non-union show, so they would use fake names. So Scott gets credited as C. Puppington, which was the name of one of his characters on another Adult Swim show, Moral Oral. We've covered Moral Oral on the Patreon, so I got into Scott there. So I don't want to get too into him, but Scott, besides being on Moral Oral, was on, for example, Robot Chicken, Delocated, The Heart She Holler. He was on a lot of other Adult Swim stuff, but Scott, he's been in so many things, some other notable ones being Big Hero 6, 30 Rock, and The Terminal. But you know what Scott was also on? Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and you're like, yeah, no shit, that's why you're talking about him. No, not this episode. He is on a future episode as well. He plays Drew Baca in 2.5 Star Wars out of 5, which is next season. So I asked Dave Willis, I'm like, hey, do you remember, how you got in contact with Scott? What it was like working with him on Hoppy Bunny? And Dave didn't remember working with Scott on Hoppy Bunny, but he does have memories of working with him on 2.5 Star Wars out of 5. So not a whole lot of behind-the-scenes information there, but Scott Adsit, look, if you need a job done, I think he's capable because his IMDb is fucking longer than this podcast episode. So, Hoppy Bunny, he's in here. We see something evil is happening to Carl. This is not good. We're cutting over to the Aqua Teens house now, and it's family night. I guess this is something they do. They are playing a board game called Organ Harvest. So, some fun details on the board here. Not a whole lot happens with the game, and that's kind of the point, because slowly outside we will start to hear some recorder playing.
You have lost a kidney. Move back 3 spaces.
You get that card every time.
Damn. Okay, your roll.
I love family night.
What is that?
Some girl begging for my body.
That's not a woman. How can you even tell it's a woman? It sounds like a flute or something.
Well, I only date women.
Yeah, right. But what's your point?
I never had one. And that drives you crazy, doesn't it?
We get some insight here into Master Shake that maybe he's not as dumb as he portrays himself. It's almost like he's portraying himself in a dumb way just to piss Frylock off, which is actually kind of genius here. And I love that he says he only dates women, but of course, back to our previous episode, Ridiculous, he did get on that gay zombie ape party bus. I'm just throwing that out there. Visually, before I get to the board game, I just picked up on this detail where Frylock rolls, he draws a card, and then he has to, go back some spaces. Master Shake is just laying there, right? We're in the living room. Of course, the green chair isn't there. Master Shake is laying down, and you'll see Shake, he throws the dice onto the board, and then Meatwad moves Shake's piece for him, and then Meatwad rolls and moves his own piece. So a great, great detail here. I love this detail that Shake isn't, like, he'll throw the dice and, like, roll, but he doesn't even move his own piece. And I don't know if that's, like, maybe it was too hard to get Shake to actually play the board game. Like, maybe they tried to get him to move his own piece, but it was just too much to animate. But also, it could just be because Shake is lazy and he's just making Meatwad move his piece for him. So, super fascinating here. A really fun detail that I did not notice until right now. But speaking of details, our friend Bob Pettit here is doing the work on this board game that they are playing. It's called Organ Harvest. So, visually on the board, we see, for example, a hospital. We see China. Like, it's like this half mountain split in half with some oriental architecture on it, and it just says China on it in like a Wong burger type of font. And then we have a giant like body kind of diagram coming out of the board. It's insane. It's very colorful too. Such a fun prop here from Bob. I love this board game. And I love that the Aqua teens are playing together. They're having family nights, but it's interrupted. We have some recorder playing outside, so Meatwad and Frylock, they're going to go over to the window to see what's going on out there, where we will see Hoppy Bunny dancing out in the street with Carl playing the recorder. Again, he's got the wires in his mouth, in his arms, but Carl looks very different here, okay? He's got on that kind of elf costume that was given to him, but his skin, first of all, is green. He has these elfin ears, and his head is like deformed into a hat, and his toes are coming out of his flip-flops are deformed into like these pointy shoes that you might see an elf wearing. After seeing that, Frylock and Meatwad are going to go outside and figure out what's going on.
Huh. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, that is weird. I'm gonna go join them.
Damn it! Carl ordered that kid. He's gonna score more than I do, and I've been saving up for that. There's only one of them in existence. Probably.
Carl, who's your friend?
Please, do not speak to the musician. I am Hoppy Bunny, and he is here to entertain.
Huh? What's that, Carl?
Help me.
I can't make... What? Carl, what are you saying?
Help me. That's right. Help him out, y'all. Put your hands together. Let him know you love the music. When I say, y'all go, oh, yeah. Ready? We do a practice run. Ready? You're not doing it. Come on, do it. Where you going? You're going inside. Don't close the door.
Frylock just goes inside. He's like, I'm not dealing with this. So, two very different approaches to this by Frylock and Meatwad. Frylock is concerned, but he can't really understand Carl's saying, help me. And Meatwad's just dancing around, and he gets all into it. He's excited by it. The music that they have Carl playing here, that piece of music is called Chirpy. It is composed by Duncan Lamont, and it is from the album Solos 1 Wind Instruments. So, link to this in the description to this podcast episode. I don't know if that's a recorder or not. I'm only used to hearing my own recorder when I practice 4 hours a day in the nude with my cape on. Otherwise, I don't know what other people's recorders sound like. I know there's different sizes to them and things like that. So maybe this is just flute. I guess recorder is a kind of flute. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not the guy to ask on this. But yes, the music there is called Chirpy. So it's well established that I play recorder, and I'm actually very good at it. I had to ask Dave Willis, when he was a kid, did he ever play recorder in school?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, maybe once.
Like in elementary school or something?
Yeah. Theme from MASH, Suicide is Painless. I do remember something like that, yeah.
A room of 7-year-olds playing that.
Yeah, very sad.
For anyone counting out there, that's the second time Dave has brought up MASH on the podcast. And this one goes out to Dave. All right, I'm not going to make you listen to the whole thing. And then Matt Maiellaro brought it up himself, his history, tooting on a flute.
I remember being in grade school, like 3rd, 4th grade, and this guy came in with these flutes, little silver flute with a little black plastic bugle at the end, and played it, had music, and then we all got our parents to pay like $3 to get them. And I got it. And I tried to figure out how to play it.
And as we know, Matt did figure out how to play it because he plays it masterfully in the infomercial at the beginning of this episode. So continuing on here with Hoppy Bunny, Frylock went inside. Well, sometime later, there's a knock at the door. It's another furry, this time a panda, and he's got to piss now. Frylock's going to go outside, and there's just a ton of furries now out there of every animal you could imagine. Well, not every animal, but lots of animals having a good time partying. Frylock's going to go inside to talk to Shake about this. Shake's watching TV, and he's going to reveal that he's turned Frylock's bedroom into a parking garage.
Where's the bathroom? Where's the bathroom? Where's the bathroom?
We don't have a bathroom.
Doesn't matter. Never mind.
Shake, what the hell are all these people doing dressed like animals on the lawn?
I don't know. They paid me to park, not freaking loiter.
Park.
Yes, park. It's English. It means to put your car at rest at a public or private area.
And how much did you charge?
For parking or for cigarettes?
Cigarettes? You sold them my cigarettes.
What? You said you quit.
Look, I'm dealing with a lot of bullshit right now at work, okay? And I kind of need it to get me through this hump.
Buddy, I know what you mean. I'm running a parking business in our house, and let me tell you, that's damn stressful.
What do you mean, in our house?
No, not the house, in your room. Or as it is now known, level C4, promenade.
Damn it.
Frylock's bedroom now, level C4 promenade. We see spray painted on the wall pointing to Frylock's room. It says parking $12. Shake's making some good money here, although he says it's stressful. He lights up a cigarette. I do want to bounce back to my email with Ted Murphy. Ted suspects that these cigarette jokes were poking fun at himself and Tom Nicoletti. Ted says, Tom and I would waste time in the smoker's alley when I was waiting on a render. So Ted's suspecting here that Matt and Dave were poking fun at them because I guess they were known as the smokers around the office. Myself personally, I don't smoke, but I also got enough secondhand smoke as a kid growing up that I don't have to because I've probably smoked the equivalent of 47 cartons of cigarettes, so I'm already pretty damn cool. So I got nothing else to prove. I knocked all that out earlier in life so I can get lung cancer. Okay, I'm done with this. I want to mention to you the panda furry who comes inside. That is Ned Hastings. That is Ned doing a quick voice line that they needed, and he comes inside. I do want to mention this episode being kind of significant if you want to get into the pointless nitty-gritty details, which is basically the point of this podcast. And why this episode is significant is because this is our first time since Season 2, Episode 22's The, where we have Aqua Teen editors and producers J. Wade Edwards and Ned Hastings both appearing in an episode at the same time. Because in that episode, Frylock is trying to throw a housewarming party for himself. Ned calls and says that he's not coming to the party, so we hear Ned on the phone, and then Jay shows up as himself in that episode, obviously in cartoon form, but yeah, Jay shows up and talks to Frylock. So here we have Ned voicing a character and Jay dancing around live action style in this one. So a fun little detail there. Over on the TV, we can hear Dave in the background as a news anchor. And on the TV, we see a still image of Dave with its mouth being puppeted, almost like South Park style. It's hard to see, especially if you're not watching a 1080p version of this like I am, but that's what's going on there. I was surprised to see it. It feels very interesting for Aqua Teen, but at the same time, Aqua Teen already shows that it plays with mixed media, as seen in this episode where we have live action shots next to the normal cartoon footage of the show. But Dave there, he seems to be talking about some sort of murder, some sort of brutal murder that happened. I love when the panda comes in, though. He's like, bathroom, and Frog's like, we don't have a bathroom. And then the guy runs in anyways, presumably to use that hole in the ground with the pizzas that we saw earlier this season. I want to talk about the parking garage in Frylock's bedroom now. When I was talking with Dave Willis about this episode, he had a bit of a personal story that maybe informed this joke in this episode.
I grew up in this town, Conyers, and there was a period there where once a month, this woman, I'm blanking on her name, but she lived out on Highway 138, and she would see Jesus once a month. And thousands of people would do a pilgrimage to Conyers for her monthly visit with Jesus. And the only reason I knew was because I'd be like, man, the drive-through line at McDonald's is crazy, you know? And I don't know how those events went. I don't know if she came out and said, talked to everyone out in her pasture. Listen, I spoke with Jesus, and he said, y'all be good, and to be very careful on your drive back to Alabama, like in Florida. And he blesses you guys, amen, and pay so-and-so for parking over here. And I remember she finally came out and said, I'm done seeing Jesus. This woman down in Florida is now going to start seeing her. I was told to pass on the information, but I remember her neighbors were charging $20 a pop to park in their pasture, and I remember thinking, they were like, can't you just see Jesus for like one more year? Like, I got to put my kid through trade school, and you're taking a lot of money out of my pocket. Jesus is. And I think that came from that. Because I think that happened around that time, I think. I'm not sure.
Wow, what a story from Dave. I'm not seeing Jesus no more. I'm passing it on to somebody in Florida. Oh my God. So a great anecdote there. Loved hearing that. Frylock, however, did not love hearing that his bedroom is now a parking garage. And in true Aqua Teen fashion, when we go to Frylock's bedroom later in the episode, it's no longer a parking garage. And visually, it's destroyed. Bob Pettit did draw this, where there's cars, the whole room is destroyed, there's cars parked in it. It's a really fun gag. But we're going to cut outside now to Carl's pool. And all the furries are congregating in and around the pool. There are even some dancing up on Carl's roof and the Aqua Teen's roof, so it's a big party, and our boy Meatwad is conducting it all. Meatwad here, he's the center of it all, but Frylock's gonna show up and shut this party down. A unicorn furry is gonna come up, grab Frylock, and start dancing with him, and it's so gross. Where this guy's penis would be, because remember, these are humans in suits, right? These aren't supposed to be actual otherworldly creatures, they are humans in suits. The guy essentially jizzed his pants. He's having such a good time. Hey, we've all been there. Interestingly, this wet stain is pixelated out. And then we will also see Hoppy Bunny up in Carl's room, and he will close the shades at the end of the clip.
Everybody in the house say, oh!
Oh yeah! Meanwhile, I don't think you need to be hanging out with these furry people. You need to go inside.
But if I go inside now, I can't be going, and everybody go, oh yeah. Oh yeah! That one didn't count, y'all. Now I'm doing it. Oh!
You need to get the hell off me.
Yeah, don't be hugging that unicorn. He just, inappropriate. And that wet spot keeps growing on him now. You a newbie. I started out with the frog or the bumblebee or the tadpole. Work your way up to the unicorn.
Okay. And where the hell is Hoppy Bunny?
Oh, he's in the pleasure chamber. He's not to be disturbed.
Pleasure chamber? Well, I'll tell you what, he's about to be very disturbed.
Carl's bedroom, now the pleasure chamber. When Meatwad mentions, he's like, oh, the unicorn is too advanced for you. You gotta start with, the bumblebee or the frog or the tadpole. When he says tadpole, a tiny little furry in a frog outfit jumps out of the pool, which has to be the smallest human in the world. It's so tiny. It's pretty cute. Now, look, we've been avoiding here. I was going to say the elephant in the room, but I'm going to say the man dressed as an elephant in the room. The furry aspect to this episode. I definitely remember learning about furries around this time, so I guess it was on a lot of people's minds. But I don't really have any thoughts on it or care that much about it, so I don't really have anything to say in that respect. But I did want to figure out what my fursona would be, okay? Because I don't have one, and I want one. So I took a quiz on the internet here, and they told me, all right, that my fursona is a cat. And that is no surprise to me, and I'm actually kind of angry how accurate this was, because I talked about how I love kitty cats in the previous episode. So go listen to that one if you want the background info on my fursona here. But now here's the thing, and here is where I am suspicious, is the website I took this quiz on, all right, you follow me? They sell fursuits, and so I'm guessing that their quiz only gives you options of what you can be based on what they sell. So now I'm pissed off, and I'm changing my fursona to a jellyfish, all right? And you might be wondering why I picked jellyfish, and that's because I want it to be where if I touch somebody, somebody else has to pee on you. I want that to be the reality that I live in. So I will be fielding no further questions about my fursona. I want to touch on the music here used during this dance scene. This track is called Repercussion, composed by Mad Dog Sly, Manny Fly, and Colin Badman. This is from the album Tech House. Link to this in the description to this episode. On a more serious note, though, regarding furries and specifically their use in this episode, I remember my first time seeing this being kind of taken aback by how this didn't feel particularly Aqua Teen-centric to me. It felt kind of strange that Aqua Teen was doing something about furries, especially at this time when, like, I had just kind of learned about them. So I did find that to be off, and we will loop back to that later in this podcast episode. So, continuing on here, Hoppy Bunny, he is up in the pleasure chamber. We're going to go up into Carl's room, and Hoppy Bunny is going to be on the phone, but he's going to be out of his furry costume. Well, he'll be in it, but like his head will be out of the side of it, and this man will be on the phone. Frylock's going to come upstairs to interrupt him. He's not going to be happy.
Well, just clamp the main artery and I'll be there as soon as I can. Look, it's standard brain replacement surgery. I do them in my sleep. What do you mean, what am I doing? I'm getting my groove on. I have a life outside of brain surgery. That's just what I do for a living. It doesn't define me. Doesn't make me a bad surgeon. Oh, but furry bunny hands make me a bad surgeon? It may be weird to you, but it is my religion.
What the hell do you want?
What have you done to Carl?
We've unleashed him! You know you want a piece.
A piece? A piece of what?
A piece of the animal! The wires go all the way into his body. It controls him. He'll die without it.
Get that thing out of him!
No!
So anticlimactic. No! So even though these are furries, which, like I just said, to me doesn't feel like a normal Aqua Teen kind of topic, they are executing this in a very Aqua Teen way. So it doesn't feel completely jarring, like, what is going on right now? It does feel like Aqua Teen, but there is this component that does feel a little bit different. But to the man inside of the Hoppy Bunny suit, when we see him visually, remember, this is played by Scott Adsit, but the visual of this character is based on Aqua Teen art director Bob Pettit. And this was done by Aqua Teen artist Todd Redner. Todd and Bob are friends, so Todd thought to draw Bob for this episode. So visually, that is supposed to be Bob Pettit. Now, I've talked to Bob a lot. I don't know that he's a furry, but I do know that he does look like this character in this episode. So if you see Bob on Instagram or Twitter, that is at Pettit_art on both. That is why he uses this picture of Hoppy Bunny, because visually it is based on himself. But to Hoppy Bunny in terms of this episode, we find out he's like a surgeon. He does these kind of complicated surgeries. And that brings me to a note on furries I want to address, which is how fucking expensive these costumes are, okay? Say what you want about furries, they're not broke, okay? These costumes start at like a couple grand, and if you want like a real deal one, it's like $6,000 for these things. These are like real deal hobbies that you spend a lot of money on, okay? So I like the fact that they had the guy playing the furry, that they had him as this like very successful surgeon, because I think that's kind of the case a lot of the time. You gotta be. How else do you afford these costumes? I want to point out that Ted Murphy, who is again one of the original writers of this episode, he told me that his favorite joke in the episode is the timing during this scene when Hoppy Bunny gets off the phone and then asks Frylock, "What the hell do you want?" And speaking of that original draft of this episode, I should have said this earlier. I did ask Ted if he had the original draft, but he couldn't find it. But apparently, Hoppy Bunny, his name was originally King Furry. And I think that really makes sense visually as to the drawing of this character, because he's a bunny, but he also has a crown on, which doesn't really make sense. So it makes more sense if he were to have been called King Furry, because like he's wearing a crown. So that maybe explains that a little bit. And speaking of explain, we got a lot of exposition there where Hoppy Bunny says to Frylock, like, Carl needs that recorder, basically, otherwise he'll die without it. And it seems, I take it as he was trying to convert Frylock to be a furry as well. And the guy said it was his religion, too, on the phone. So there's something of a cult going on here. We're going to now cut to Frylock's room. He has Carl in his room, and Frylock has just this giant, like, x-ray machine or something. He wants to run some tests on Carl to see if he can help him, but Meatwad and some of the furries followed them. They are in the room as well, and they are just making such a ruckus that Frylock cannot do this testing on Carl. He needs them to leave.
Carl, stand still.
Yeah.
Carl, please stop prancing around. Carl, stand still. Don't dance over there. Get up there.
Meanwhile, stand out of his way.
This is a delicate procedure here. I'm trying to x-ray, Carl. Will you please stop with the and the oh yeah?
It's a delicate procedure.
Look, I need it quiet in here. Just take him down the hall.
All right. Let's go down the hall.
Let's go down the hall, huh? Meanwhile, trying to keep it down. Remember, Carl here visually is very different. He is this recorder player. Well, in the commentary, we learn how the idea for this episode started, and what they really latched onto when this episode was a germ of an idea was Carl turning into a Pied Piper. So I've been familiar with the Pied Piper in terms of like just a guy who plays the flute, but according to Wikipedia, the legend dates back to the Middle Ages. The earliest references describe a piper dressed in multicolored clothing, which multicolored means pied. So Pied Piper makes sense that it's a guy in multicolored clothing playing a pipe. So the Pied Piper was a rat catcher hired by the town to lure rats away with his magic pipe. When the citizens refused to pay for the service as promised, he retaliated by using his instrument's magical power on their children, leading them away as he had the rats. I didn't know that. That's fucking crazy. That is so cool. So that was the original idea for this, like before anything else was just, okay, we want Carl to turn into the Pied Piper. And now, to me, the commentary is making more sense because they also mention in the commentary that before it was furries, it was rats. So now it makes sense. They were just playing with this medieval legend where, yeah, Carl was going to play the recorder, and that was going to influence rats at first. And they said that they spent a lot of time changing what it was that Carl would influence with his recorder. And eventually they landed on furries. So I could see how you would go from rats to furries with that. So very cool to see how this idea started out. You would have thought that this episode started out as Ted and Tom being like, oh, let's do something about furries, but that was not the case. It actually is based not on a newer trend, but actually an old medieval tale from a long, long time ago. So very, very fun to learn that. That is the kind of detail that makes me appreciate this episode more. Because the intent of something is important, right? So when you learn they weren't trying to make a furry-based episode, but a Pied Piper-based episode, pretty cool. Meatwad and the furries are gone, so Frylock can start to run some tests on Carl. Unfortunately, Shake's going to show up, but Frylock will still be able to run this test. We're going to get a cool shot of Carl's skeleton on Frylock's computer with the x-ray here, and we see all these wires kind of going through Carl's body. It's really well done. Looks very, very cool. Shake is going to suggest he just kills Carl with a shotgun. He's going to pull out the black shotgun that we first saw last season in Ezekiel. Frylock's going to stop him, but Carl, he's going to tell them to follow him, and he's going to start to leave Frylock's room at the end of the clip.
What's going on?
Shake!
Dynamite! I love that.
Look at this, Shake. It appears that the recorder has fused with every organ in his body.
Oh, you think?
It seems to be controlling his every action.
I can cure him with my healing stick.
Put that away.
You know I'm a gangster, G. You just won't admit it, because Styrone won't let you into the club.
Follow me.
You gotta have ice water in your veins to kill.
Wait a minute, Shake. Wait, he's trying to tell us something.
I love Shake dropping dynamite, which is the catchphrase of JJ on the show Good Times. Good Times running from 1974 to 1979, so it's a bit of a deeper cut, but as we know, Shake knows all sorts of these old TV shows, mainly because he just sits around watching TV all day, so you tend to gather that kind of information. Shake there mentioning somebody named Styrone, and then Shake talks about how tough he is, and you're guessing here that Shake's making that up in order to seem tough, like it's something he saw on TV, but we are going to put a pin in that, because that will come up in our next clip here. Carl didn't want to be shot by Master Shake. Confusingly, though, he's going to go outside now, and he's going to lay down in the street, and he's going to ask for them to run over him. It's like, well, for me personally, I'd rather get my head blown off with a shotgun than ran over by a car. I feel like that'd be a quicker and cleaner death. But hey, we just need to see how it plays out here. So we're going to go outside in the street where Carl, he will still be playing the recorder. And a fun detail is he's laying on his back, but his feet are still kicking around like they've been doing all episode. He can't help how the recorder is making him act. Shake and Frylock are going to have a hard time understanding him until Frylock realizes what Carl is saying. He wants to die, so then Frylock will take out the same black shotgun. He'll go to pull the trigger. Unfortunately, it's not loaded, and then Shake is going to leave an angry voice message on Styrone's voicemail.
You're happy that the city repaved the roads?
No, it's not that.
Get a car.
He wants a car to come. He's trying to kill himself.
No. He's happy with the repaving. He's a brand new road.
Carl, if that's what you want, let's do this quickly.
Do it!
Come on.
It's not loaded.
Let me see.
There's a gun in the barrel.
Come on.
You could have been killed in that liquor store.
What liquor store?
Yes, leaving a message for Styrone. The gun you sold me? No bullets in it. Is this your idea, kicking it real? Huh? Because it's not very real to me. You better text me, dog, and explain this. He usually is good about getting right back to you.
Look.
He's probably going to call back right now.
I do not have time for this, Shake.
Well, please tell me what you do have time for.
Something I'm thinking about is it's interesting that when Frylock was talking to Hoppy Bunny, Carl was out in the road playing the recorder. Maybe he was there trying to just get ran over by a car. I'm really not sure. But again, why did he stop Shake from pulling the trigger in Frylock's room? I don't know. Maybe he didn't want to make a mess. Regardless, the gun has no bullets in it, and Shake alludes to like robbing a liquor store earlier. So I love anytime we get a reference to something that happens off screen, like we get more of a peek into Master Shake's life, for example. And like I said previously, in Frylock's room, it seemed like Styrone was a fake character because that's a fake name. But Master Shake does take out the phone. He does call somebody, and you could see very small on his phone, there is like a little picture of the person he's calling, and it does look to be a guy with long hair, and it says Styrone on it. So I guess Shake does know some other people, and to me, a brilliant joke that Shake is pissed off that the gun he bought wasn't loaded already. Like he thinks, like that's not necessarily included when you buy a gun. In fact, I would assume most times it's not. But a fun little twist there that Frylock, almost did this mercy killing on Carl, but it didn't quite work out. They have no bullets. Of course, that begs the question, like, well, it's Frylock. He's got magic powers. Like, he could just explode Carl, couldn't he? But hey, that wouldn't be any fun. You know what else isn't fun? Shake is angry. He throws the phone down. It doesn't explode. Pretty disappointing. Frylock says he doesn't have time to mess around with Shake. He's trying to save Carl. Says, I don't have time for this. Shake asks him what he does have time for. We're now going to get... It's a crazy cut. We cut to Frylock's room. The lights are all off. It's dark in his room. There are candles lit everywhere. These candles from Season 3, Episode 1's Video Ouija. And Shake is giving Frylock a massage. And if you think it's too good to be true... Well, it is. That's basically every time Shake is nice, there's an ulterior motive, which is to steal Frylock's gem on his back.
Yeah, man. Oh, yeah, that's a spot.
There's stress knots all over here.
Oh, yeah, that feels good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right there. Yeah, I shouldn't get so worked up about everything,
I know. You can't be there every time Carl makes a bad decision. Gotta live your own life.
I know, but it's just, he's so stupid, Oh, that was Carl.
No. We're talking about you right now. And the jewel.
Ow! Shake, no!
The jewel is mine! I have the power of 1,000 suns!
Shake has the power of 1,000 suns. He basically grabs the jewel from Frylock's back. Frylock tries to fly away, but he just falls down onto the ground, and he sets on fire because he falls into the candles, and that flame, you know what it is. We actually haven't seen this flame that much at all this season, if at all. I actually don't even think we've seen it this season because I haven't played that sound effect. If you're new to the podcast, there's this flame effect that they reuse in Aqua Teen constantly, especially in the earlier seasons, that I lovingly call the Mbop Hansen flame, because it stemmed from an episode of Space Ghost Coast to Coast, where Space Ghost goes with Hansen. He goes camping with them, and the camping footage is live action. Dave Willis and Matt Maiellaro filmed it for Space Ghost, and then they reuse that flame effect all over the show. In fact, those are actually the flames we see on the candles. So I should have played this sound effect a lot more, but to me, this flame, love seeing it. It's almost like a character in itself. Glad they brought it back here. But yeah, Frylock falls down, catches on fire, and then Shake goes outside. He's holding the jewel, and he flies into the air, and there's like all these crazy effects going on as the furries are all dancing outside. I'm actually fascinated that they brought the jewel into this episode, right? We see it a lot on Frylock, but they very rarely address it. So fun to me that they're playing with it here, after all these seasons. And maybe they've addressed it one other time in the show, I can't remember, but I know that they will go on to do that in a future episode. And actually, breaking with the continuity of this episode, I know there's an episode in the future where it's revealed that all the Aqua Teens have this jewel, and that's how they're alive. So, like, Shake has one on the bottom of his cup, and Meatwad has one somewhere on his body. But I'm getting ahead of us here because that's in a future episode. But very excited to see this jewel in play. So, Shake has the jewel. He has the power of 1,000 suns. He has this godlike ability. What's he gonna do with it? Well, he's gonna go to the pawn shop and try and sell it.
I'll go 20 on this.
12. That's the best I can do.
All right, how about 20?
How about 12?
Killing me here. All right. Tell you what. I'll go 20.
Tell you what. I'll go 12.
How about that boombox back there?
That's an AM transistor radio.
But it will play cassettes, right? And the MP3s.
I don't know. Yeah, it does.
Can you throw that in?
Okay, sure.
Yes! You got a deal, sucker!
Shake selling the Jewel of Ida Hercules for $12 and an AM radio. So I think he got ripped off here, but he's excited about it. He's happy about it. I guess that's all that matters. This pawn shop, very, very detailed. This episode is going so long. I'm not going to talk about the pawn shop here because we will see it in the future. So we'll save that for another episode. But I do want to briefly mention here, that is Scott Fry, who again founded Radical Axis, which is the studio that does the animation for Aqua Teen, at least at this period. As far as I know, he's not really an actor, but I think he does such a great job here. Just the way he plays this is like perfect for Aqua Teen. This is exactly the kind of like nonchalant character I love in Aqua Teen. He's just humoring whatever Shake is going to say, and yeah, he's just like, yeah, sure, that radio does whatever you want it to do, and he completely scams Master Shake, but that's kind of Shake's fault. Scott Fry has credits on a bunch of shows we are familiar with, of course, like Space Ghost Coast to Coast, 12-Ounce Mouse, Squidbillies, Perfect Hair Forever, as well as Archer. So Scott Fry makes a lot of stuff that we like. When I talked to Dave, he told me that this sequence was one of his favorite parts of this episode.
I love the fact that it just sort of has no kind of connection to the story that Shake just decides to give Frylock a massage. And then he, of course, he would not selflessly do this. He's doing it to take the jewel. And even though the jewel gives him the power of 1,000 suns, then he immediately is willing to sell it, $20. And he's such a bad negotiator that he thinks he could just stay at 20 and the guy will come up to it. Weirdly, that was my favorite part of this. That and Matt taking his wig off and going, okay, you should not have bought this before.
Dave, very happy with how both of those parts of the episode turned out. And you know who else is happy? Master Shake, because now he's got some money in his hand and he's got his radio. He can now get his DJ business going. So Shake is going to return home here in our last clip. He's going to talk about what he has. Of course, Frylock is on the couch and he looks very ill now, very sick, because he's missing his jewel. And we're going to be there. We're going to see outside that the furries are still dancing. They're still having a good time. But Carl is laying in the road, hoping to die, still playing recorder. So nothing's really changed in this episode. And then it's going to end with the pawn shop owner. He's going to be flying through the sky. Well, he just got the power of 1,000 suns, baby.
I can finally start my DJ business.
I think my back is infected.
Oh, it's always about you. Well, I am working weddings now, and I am extremely motivated.
Well, what about Carl, y'all?
Almost forgot. His tape collection. Get it?
Hey, check it out. I got the power of 1,000 suns.
So there is Scott Fry flying around here, ending the episode. And I do want to say, in the commentary, of course, we get information on the original version of this script and also what Tom and Ted went through writing it, some ideas they had. And one of the ideas they had was Carl was going to turn into a griffin and eviscerate the furries. That's how this was going to end. And we kind of have Scott Fry here fulfilling that role because as he's flying around, he's shooting lightning out, setting things on fire. I don't see any furries dying here, but you would think they might with all the destruction that Scott is raining down. And visually, I love it because when Scott Fry, that's what I'm calling this character, this pawn shop owner, when he is working at the pawn shop, he has his like arms crossed and he's kind of like hunched a little bit standing there. And when he's flying around with the jewel here, they just use that same pose. He's just like holding the jewel in his arms. And it's like such a stiff, silly look that I love from Aqua Teen, you know, with their limited animation, like the same thing that Ted Murphy was talking about earlier in this podcast episode. Like, to me, the fact that they didn't do another drawing makes this even funnier than if they like did a more grand drawing of him flying around. It's just so silly looking. Another thing that they mentioned in the commentary that they don't really get too into, but apparently Frylock and Hoppy Bunny were going to fall in love with each other. I don't exactly know how that was going to play out, but that's what they were talking about in the commentary. And again, with these commentaries, you always have to take it a little bit with a grain of salt, but it seemed like they were kind of serious because they reiterated it a few times. So that seemed to have been an idea they had, or it was in the original draft. But regardless, Matt and Dave took the original draft and they did their own thing with it, which is the episode that we have before us today that we just got done talking about moments ago. Another detail I picked up on was when Frylock is sitting there all sick, which, by the way, is a new drawing as opposed to when he was sick in Party All the Time. When he's sick sitting in the chair, they're watching TV, and it is the Recorder Wizard Vagina Domination commercial. That's what they're watching, so a fun full circle on that. I don't know why they're entertaining this. Maybe Frylock is trying to do some research and figure out who is behind all this. Not really sure, but that's what they are watching on the TV screen. So, holy cow, that is Hoppy Bunny, but you know, we're not done yet. We got some other things to dig into. First of all, what was being said about Hoppy Bunny the week that it came out? As always, the link to this Toon Zone forum thread in the description to this podcast episode if you'd like to read it yourself. Let's see what folks were saying when this came out back in February of 2008. User John Johns says, second half was awesome. First half had a lot of what I've disliked about the last few seasons. Meatwad farting, and Carl spending all that time watching that video about how to get women for so long. The show is better before it was allowed to be rated TVMA, which led to wasting time on stuff like this. I completely disagree with John Johns here. Like, Meatwad farting and that whole video segment had nothing to do with being rated TVMA. Like, none of that was MA. Like, you don't have to be TVMA to show a fart in an episode. Now, interestingly, in the ridiculous commentary with Dave and Jay Edwards and Dana Snyder, they do kind of like poke fun at themselves for having the fart jokes, so they might be inclined to agree with like how having a fart joke is dumb, but it's such a small moment of the episode, and also I just completely disagree on not liking the video aspect because, I mean, hey, you heard me talk about how much I love it. I'm going to read one more comment here. It's kind of a long one, but I like what they have to talk about. So this is from The Mist. The Mist says, this was the best episode in a long time. So many funny gags. I especially loved Hoppy Bunny on the phone with his assistant talking about being a brain surgeon. The whole ending was probably the best part with the stolen gem and the AM transistor radio. This whole season so far has been a huge step up from the last one. Probably because they're putting their full attention into it instead of dividing it between the show and the movie. The writing is just sharper and wittier. It's just as crazy, and there's still gross out humor, but there's just some element they've regained that was kind of lacking last time around. It's the same element that made old Aqua Teen Hunger Force great. Another thing I like about the season is the continuity. Markula, the gas leak, the cigarettes, even the little nod to the show's universe, such as the Aqua Teen house not having a bathroom or Frylock's jewel. It's all very cohesive despite the incoherence of the plots. It shows the writers are putting effort into what they're doing. This is Ronnie chiming in. Yeah, take note, Matt and Dave. You better start putting more effort in. The Mist says, the new budget is also really helping. The new animation is fantastic. The show just looks better. I love all the new poses they're using and the new places they're showing, i.e. the backyard of the Aqua Teen house. I think making the movie probably made them realize how much better this show could look if they wanted it to. I'm not a huge stickler about great animation. I watch Adult Swim after all, but the extra effort is appreciated. Now, that's not to say that I didn't love last season. Bart Oates and Ezekiel are two of my favorite episodes. But it was kind of like a weak album from your favorite band. Are there songs you love? Of course, but it's not up to their usually very high standards. It's average. That's how I felt about last season of Aqua Teen Hunger Force. This season is sort of like their comeback. So that's what the Mist had to say, and I also want to mention that there is another comment or two chiming in saying, yeah, season 4 wasn't as good, and this season is much better. And that is so interesting to me in 2024 here, because I feel like the opinion is very different. Now, these are just a few comments in one forum thread. I understand that. But these days, it seems like season 4 is considered like this classic, amazing season. And season 5, many people say, is the worst season of the show. So it's interesting for me to see here in early 2008 that people had the exact opposite opinion of that when this was happening in real time. Worth mentioning, I don't know if the budget was bigger on this season. Like, I didn't work on this show, I don't know. My guess is it probably was not, because you also have to account for the fact that, one, technology was progressing a lot at this point. I mean, remember, Ted Murphy's hooking these guys up with state-of-the-art Macintoshes, all right? They're able to do a lot more. But also, the guys working on the show have been working on it longer and longer. They're getting better at doing it. So I don't think that it was really like a bigger budget or anything that made the show look better. I think it was really technology and the crew just getting better at what they're doing. On top of that, as I've mentioned before so many times on the podcast, because of the Aqua Teen film, movie film for theaters in 2007, they then, because of that film, got to make all of these like high-res backgrounds, but also upscale the characters. And so they have these for this season. So this season, again, it's not because of a higher budget, it's because they have these assets from the film. But nice here to see the Mist like this one. Overall, the impression on the forum here is pretty good. People really seem to enjoy this one, which is nice, because if you'll recall, when we covered the first 3 episodes this season, people were very upset. So now the Aqua Teens are back and people are happy again. Hoppy Bunny, people enjoyed it. But before I give you my thoughts on it, let's hear what Dave Willis has to say about Hoppy Bunny, because I mentioned earlier in this episode that when I first saw this, whenever I saw it, years ago, whenever that was, I remember just the fact that this was about furries stood out to me. And of course, we can kind of chalk that up now to Ted Murphy and Tom Nicoletti, because they introduced that element. It wasn't Matt and Dave who came up with that. But let's hear what Dave has to say about this now in 2024.
I think, you know what I don't think I liked was the furry thing. And it was just like, we could have episodes where any creature could come, any monster, anything. And furries were just people that dressed in suits and usually had some sort of sexual proclivity connected to it. And it was something that was happening at the time, so it felt a little sort of weirdly and unnecessarily topical. So this was something that I was like, I think the Carl aspect like is a little bit sort of like a poor man's clowning. He gets something and it transforms him. I mean, it's like we kind of did that. I'm not dissing these, Tom and Ted were probably like 23 at the time, and just sort of, but I remembered sort of thinking at the time, this doesn't work as well for me. Like, it's tough to read the lines. So I don't know to what extent we rewrote it or what, but watching it, I was like, this is very consistent. I mean, people will talk to me about this particular episode, and say that they like it. And so I mean, it was so bizarre. I probably haven't seen it in forever.
So there's Dave's thoughts on this. And again, he had nothing but great things to say about Tom and Ted elsewhere when I was talking to him that you're not hearing. So he wasn't trying to diss them or anything like he's saying here. It was like just the furry thing kind of stood out to him, which I guess is kind of like, well, why didn't you guys change it then? Because they did rewrite it. But one thing that Dave brings up that I found very interesting was he does equate this to a poor man's The Clowning, that being season 2, episode 20, one of my favorite episodes of Aqua Teen. I think one of the best episodes of the show. Like, it's just such a consistently tight episode. He's right. Because The Clowning is Carl, he gets this wig because he thinks it's going to help him get chicks, and then it ends up turning him to a clown. In this one, Carl gets the recorder because he thinks it's going to help him get chicks. It turns him into a Pied Piper for furries. Similarly, in both episodes, you have Frylock running some sort of test on Carl, trying to figure out what's wrong with him and trying to help him. And also you have Carl basically losing himself and then asking to be killed. In both episodes, that happens. And, you know, Ted Murphy, he did intern on The Clowning, but I'm going to put a pin in this because even though there are similarities there, I do have some more thoughts on this. But before I give you my thoughts, let's hear what Matt Maiellaro had to say about this one.
I think it's one of the best episodes that I forgot what happens in it. Yeah. No, I mean, thank you for having me on. See you tomorrow.
Matt did not remember this episode. I believe I played you a clip earlier where he didn't even remember playing the instructor character twice. So he was pleased to see this and see how it all came together. So Matt dug it. And at the end of that clip there, he said he'll see me tomorrow because I have more recorder lessons with him. So moving into my thoughts here on Hoppy Bunny, let's just jump right into the clowning thing again because I want to get back to this. On paper, I would not like this episode because it's too different. Like, it has this furry aspect, which is kind of strange in terms of being something that Aqua Teen would have an episode about. And Dave's right. It's very, very similar to another episode. So the way my brain works is it's like, well, if it's like redundant, then I'm not really interested in it. But yet I still found myself loving this episode. Like, despite those clowning similarities, there is so much here different and like, it's just a completely different set of jokes that I don't care if the plot points are similar because I'm coming to Aqua Teen not for the plot, but for the jokes. So you can give me the same plot every time. If it's all different jokes and interactions between the characters, then I'm fine with it. Like, if anything here, the one thing that maybe bums me out is we don't get that much Carl, but I mean, we just had 3 episodes of Carl. That's completely fine. Going back to the furry thing, like I said, the first time I saw this one stood out to me as a strange episode because of that, but now, especially after learning how the episode came about, I'm completely fine with it. I don't care at all. Like, to me, it fits in now that I understand everything. It doesn't feel like it stands out in a bad way, and I just really grew to love this episode. Do I love it more than The Clowning? Probably not. I do love this one a lot, though. Like, this is doing a lot of different things. Like with the live-action skit with Matt. Again, yeah, they've done that character before, but they're doing it in a different way this time. Also, it's not every day you get to see Jay Edwards shake his booty around, so I like that, too. And getting to that mixed media aspect of this episode, I'm always so intrigued when they do that on Aqua Teen. It always really stands out to me. And I was talking to Dave about it, and just now I realize... Well, yeah, no shit. I mentioned it earlier. Space Ghost Coast to Coast, right? Aqua Teen stems from Space Ghost. Matt and Dave both worked on Space Ghost before Aqua Teen. That show was a mixed media show the entire time. So it's no surprise whatsoever. Like, to me, it's so obvious now in hindsight that they would inject these live action shots when they can because that's kind of where they came from. That's where Adult Swim came from. Adult Swim came from Space Ghost, and that's what they did on Space Ghost. So I kind of like answered my own question there, where I'm like, wow, how did they think to add this live action into a cartoon? And it's like, well, no shit, 14 years ago, they were already doing that on Space Ghost. So I don't have like a whole lot of sweeping thoughts on this one. Just, I really came to enjoy this, doing the podcast about it and learning about it and just watching it. I feel like it's such a tight episode. There's really no slow moments. Maybe when Carl goes out to the streets and like wants to be shot, maybe that is my least favorite part, but that's really splitting hairs here. Really enjoyed Hoppy Bunny. I think I'm going to give this one 4.5 Communist Manifesto sheet musics out of 5. I don't know. I was surprised when I first knew, like, obviously I knew this episode was this season, and I was just like, oh, Hoppy Bunny, like, not stoked to cover that one, but I really, really changed my opinion on this one. Really had a good time with it. So, reminder, stick around to the very end of this episode because I've got some bonus interview clips for you. But I want to thank you for listening. Thanks for sticking it out for this long. This is a longer episode than normal. Reminder, I've covered every Aqua Teen episode up until this point, so that is, 73 other episodes. So make sure to follow the show wherever you're listening, or you could find it over at dancingisforbidden.com. A huge thank you to the guys who helped me on this one. We had Ted Murphy giving us some great information here, Jay Edwards taking time out of his Italy vacation, and of course, Matt and Dave for getting on Zoom with me and talking about this episode. Dave specifically for watching the whole episode and writing out some thoughts for me to share with you here. And hey, you'll be hearing from Dave in some future episodes. Again, you can find all those guys at the links in the description to this podcast episode. Give all of them a follow if you're online, which I'm guessing you are, because I don't know how else you're hearing this, because, I mean, it's not out on CD or something, so I don't know where you're getting this. Otherwise, I want to thank MTD and Jonathan B. for signing up to the Patreon earlier this year. And a big shout out to all the patrons over at patreon.com/dancingisforbidden. Truly, without the support of those Moonmasters over there, I could not do this podcast. And I'm not just saying that. I don't say that lightly. I truly mean it. So I'm just so eternally grateful to them for signing up. If you would like to sign up as well, not only do you support the show, but you get a bunch of extra exclusive episodes that are living over there, covering all sorts of stuff, Aqua Teen related and Adult Swim related. And again, you get to ask questions to the guys when I interview them. And you know who gets to ask questions harder than anyone else? Our Highlander, Nick.
There can be only one!
There's only one episode this season that I noticed that gives us our Mbop Flame, just like there's only one Nick. And of course, shout outs to our number one in the Hood G tier supporters, Ian, Captain Buford, Robinson, Jason, Leshe Raton 69, Empower 706, Swimwiki, Lurvinator, Thorin the Grumpy Dwarf, Garrick, Calixto, Luz, UK No Tamashi, and Nick F. You guys can park in C4 Promenade any day of the week. I'll see you November 4th, where we are diving into our next episode, Laser Lenses. Excited for that one, and hey, have a happy Halloween. Until then, keep it cool, take it easy, bye-bye.
But, going back to that shoot with the recorder, I remember that it was Jay specifically that said we need to do that one again. Can we do it from this angle? It was like a 12-hour shoot, and it's like a 10-second piece.
Was it really? A 12? No, it wasn't.
Yeah, 12 hours for 10 seconds. It was Jay. Jay kept saying, let me put on this other dress. Can I get on this side of you? And I didn't really mind it, but I was like, I think we got it. I think we got it the first time. Do we need to keep doing it? So I was getting hoarse from blowing into the thing and doing the voice. The wig was itchy. So
I wonder if Jay also did some shoots of just him without any of you guys there.
He did. He came to the edit with a back then it was Digibeta. He had a 6-hour Digibeta tape of all of his moves. Like, you guys want to hang out and watch this and pick the best ones? So Dave and I did. We did. We got a big old jug of whiskey and we watched every one of them. And I think we just said, Jay, you're too good at this. We don't know which one to pick. I mean, it's beyond us. It was like an early version of ILM Pixar, but we were puppeting around these characters, but we had this live action footage of Jay. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of hard to back then there wasn't Pixar, but we knew it was coming. So right. Yeah, it's kind of a mind boggle, and that's where the Advil comes in when you watch that.
Well, I appreciate you telling us this because that explains on the DVD there is about 19 hours of footage of Jay dancing, so much so that they couldn't even include any of the Aqua Teen episodes on that DVD. So a lot of fans were pissed off about that. It was just Jay dancing the whole time.
Yeah, I know. He put out his own DVD of it. I'm not sure how well it did, but when he comes to set and says, "Here's a razor where you shave my legs," I said, "Well, Dave will. I'm busy, putting on my wig and stuff." So he and Dave went to the back, and then an hour later they came out, and Jay was dressed like that.
Well, that's just being professional.
You know what? I mean, you just sometimes when a friend needs help, you just help them out.
Yeah, you just got to keep the shoot going. I think that's a lesson to any aspiring filmmakers here: is that when J. Wade Edwards needs his legs shaved, shave them.
Shave them to death.
I've been doing some conventions, and people they'll cosplay as Carl. If you ever check out my Instagram, and quite often they'll do like a Carl pose where they'll go, "Tonight." The other lines that they always ask for are, "I don't need no instructions to know how to rock." And this don't matter. None of this matters. Those two lines. Sometimes I'll hear, "I saw that my cord was plugged into my house, and your house is glowing like the frickin' sun. So I put two and two together here and decided that you're pissing me off."
This is the kind of cautionary tale that one will get upon purchasing Recorder Wizard Vagina Domination, your DVD.
I can't believe I said that word on TV.
I don't know if you did. I think it just says it.
I do say it. No, I say it. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
It's okay. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I try to keep my stuff clean, but occasionally the V word comes out.
Yeah. I mean, you got to call it like it is. It's the Recorder, man. Women love it.
If that's what's happening in real life, you just have to, it's just a fact.
On that point, is there anything in Aqua Teen maybe that you feel like it went too far, or like you regret you said, or that is out there?
Actually, to be real honest with you, I feel like in the second movie, we were mixing it at Skywalker, and when Carl's pleasuring himself in front of the computer, to me, it went on like way too long. And then I was having to sit with a sound effects editor, and we were finding these noises, and I was just turning red. And I think I went and talked to Ned and Melissa and Dave. I was like, "Guys, we got to cut this back." It's like you only need a few seconds. It was like a minute and a half of him doing this, and so it wasn't something I did, but it was something that ended up in the script, and then it's cut way back. But besides that, no, there's nothing that I think we've done or I've said that I wish I didn't